My husband of 12 years planned a surprise trip for our anniversary. I found out he was taking someone else. The notification popped up at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, while my husband was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I want to make that clear. His phone was lying face up on the nightstand, and the screen lit up the way it always does. I glanced over out of habit, the kind of reflex you develop after 12 years of marriage, when someone else's phone becomes as familiar as your own. The preview read, "Can't wait to finally have you all to myself. Hotel confirmed. Same room as last time." I remember sitting very still. The shower was still running. Steam was curling under the bathroom door. And I was sitting on the edge of our bed, the bed we'd shared for over a decade, reading those words over and over until they stopped making sense. Her name in the notification was saved simply as K. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open it. I just sat there and waited for my husband, Daniel, to come back into the room. And when he did, towel around his waist, smiling at me the way he always did, completely unbothered, completely familiar, I looked at him and thought, "Who are you?" Daniel and I met when I was 26 and he was 29. I was a graphic designer working out of a small studio in Portland. He was a sales manager for a construction firm, charming in that easy, unforced way that made you feel like the most interesting person in the room. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our fears, the kinds of lives we wanted to build. By our second year together, we were living together. By our fourth, we were married in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard with 40 people and a borrowed string quartet. We weren't perfect. No marriages. We had our hard seasons. A miscarriage in year 3 that neither of us fully processed. A stretch of financial stress when his company downsized. A period around year 8 where we felt more like roommates than lovers. But we always found our way back. That was the thing about Daniel and me. We always found our way back to each other. Or so I believed. I didn't confront him that night. I told myself I needed to be sure. That jumping to conclusions based on one vague message wasn't fair. Not to him, not to our marriage. But something inside me had already shifted. You know the feeling. When the world looks the same but feels different, like the air pressure has changed and only you can sense it. The next morning, Daniel announced over breakfast that he'd planned a surprise anniversary trip. 2 weeks away. He said he wanted to take me somewhere special. A cabin near the Oregon coast. Somewhere we'd talked about going for years but never made it to. He looked so proud of himself. So genuinely pleased. I smiled. I said it sounded wonderful. And the entire time, the message was burning a hole through every thought I had. Same room as last time. I need to tell you something about the weeks that followed, because they were the strangest of my life. I was living 2 realities simultaneously. In one, I was a wife preparing for an anniversary trip, washing clothes, packing bags, telling my co-workers I'd be away. In the other, I was slowly, methodically uncovering a truth I desperately didn't want to find. I'm not proud of what I did. I want to acknowledge that up front. But I think anyone sitting where I was sitting would have done the same. I started with small things. His email, which I'd always had the password to, we'd shared it years ago for a joint account, and he'd never changed it. I told myself I was just looking for receipts, for the hotel booking, for proof that the anniversary trip was real. It took me less than 10 minutes to find what I wasn't looking for. There were emails going back 14 months. Not dozens, hundreds. A thread so long and so detailed that reading through it felt like watching a movie about my own life, except I wasn't in it. The woman's name was Kira. She was 31, lived in Seattle, worked in marketing. She and Daniel had apparently met at a conference I remembered him mentioning, a conference I'd helped him pack for. They had inside jokes. They had a playlist. They had a coffee order he brought her every time he visited, which, based on the emails, was roughly once a month for over a year. And yes, they had a hotel. The same one. The same room. I spent one full night reading everything. By 4 a.m., I knew more about Kira than I knew about some of my closest friends. I knew her favorite restaurant, her sister's name, the fact that she was allergic to shellfish. I knew she'd asked Daniel twice if he was going to leave me. And I knew, with a cold certainty that settled into my bones, what his answer had been both times. Not yet. Just give me more time. Not yet. Not no. Not never. Not yet. The trip was 2 days away when I made my decision. I wasn't going to cancel it. I wasn't going to leave before he came home. I wasn't going to cry into my phone and call my sister at midnight, even though part of me wanted to do exactly that. I was going to go on the trip, but I was going to go knowing everything, and I was going to make a choice about what to do with that knowledge when I got there. People ask me now if that was healthy, if I should have confronted him immediately. Maybe, probably, but I think I needed those 2 days on the coast to remember who I was before he was part of the answer. We drove up on a Friday. The cabin was beautiful, cedar walls, a fireplace, a porch that looked directly out over the water. Daniel had packed wine and brought the kind of cheese I liked. He'd remembered, after all these years, that I still liked the same stupid cheese. That detail almost broke me. We ate dinner on the porch as the sun dropped into the ocean. He held my hand across the table and told me he loved me. He told me he was glad we'd made it, 12 years through everything. And I looked at him and I said, "Daniel, I know about Kira." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. He didn't deny it. I think some part of him was almost relieved. The confession came in pieces, halting at first, then a flood. A year and 2 months. A work conference. A connection he said he hadn't been looking for. He said it was a mistake. He said he'd been about to end it. He said he still loved me. He said a lot of things. I sat there, and I listened to every word. I didn't interrupt. I didn't cry, not yet. I just let him talk until there was nothing left to say. And then I told him, "I need you to go home." He looked at me like I'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. "I'm going to stay here," I said, "by myself, for the next 2 days. And when I come home, we'll figure out what comes next." Those 2 days alone in that cabin changed something in me permanently. I cried until I didn't. I walked on the beach in the rain. I called my sister and told her everything. I sat with the fireplace going and thought about 12 years. The good parts and the hard parts and the parts I'd ignored because ignoring them had felt easier than facing them. And I thought about who I wanted to be on the other side of this. I won't pretend the answer came to me like a flash of clarity. It didn't. It came slowly, the way mornings come, gradually, then all at once. Here's what I know now, 2 years later. Daniel and I did not survive. Not as a couple. We tried 8 months of therapy, some of the most painful conversations I've ever had, genuine effort on both sides. But some fractures go too deep, and ours was one of them. We signed the divorce papers on a Thursday afternoon in October, and it was sad, and it was also somehow okay. I still live in Portland. I redesigned my studio last year. New name, new logo, new energy. I run 3 times a week, something I never made time for when I was married. I'm not bitter, though I was for a long time. I'm not grateful for what happened, but I'm grateful for who I became because of it. There's a version of my life where I never looked at that phone, where I smiled through another anniversary, another year, another season of not quite knowing. And I think about that version sometimes. Then I think about the porch and the ocean, and the moment I finally chose myself. And I stopped thinking about it. If you're going through something like this right now, if you're sitting somewhere with a truth you're not sure you're ready for, I want you to know one thing. The hardest moment isn't the discovery. It's the moment after, when you have to decide who you're going to be now. That moment will define you. Make sure it defines you honestly.